A warm welcome to the second edition of the EORIX Toolkit. My name is Sandra Delalikeme, and I'm working as a DRL consultant with the GEO Secretariat, supporting the GEO DRL working group. Before we go any further, I'd like to talk about the fact that this platform, the Airmeet we are using to host this session, is a very interactive platform. So please feel free to write in the chat section to share your opinions, feedback, questions for the moderators as well. Another special thing about this interface is we have a poll function that, if you can kindly launch the poll function. It's just to get some feedback from you, to get a sense of where you are coming, like where you are joining us from, and other interesting questions to the session. So the main purpose of this side event is to share with you the EORIS toolkit, which is being developed by the GeoDR working group. The idea behind the toolkit is to inform you about the EORIS, the Geo working programs, tools and services either in development or already developed that could be considered for the EORIS toolkit, as well as to get your feedback and especially your ideas about what we could put in the session. So to achieve our aim, there'll be 3 presentations to introduce the GeoDR working group, to highlight the UNDR graph work, and also to go a little bit deeper into what has been done so far in the EORIS toolkit and how our vision for it looks like. Then this will be followed by a guided audience feedback. On that note, I'll hand over to my first speaker, who is Kotani. She is the Disaster Risk Reduction Coordinator, who is a seconded expert from the government of Japan. The floor is yours. You are on mute. Yes.
Hi, thank you. Hi, thanks, Delali. I somehow could not publish the first question, so let me just publish it now. Hold on, instantly. Okay, maybe forget about the first question. Okay. Anyway,
I just did that. Can you see it?
Okay, great. Yes. Well, not published, but I couldn't. I somehow closed the poll by mistake. So can you actually put it back into the poll? I mean,
Okay.
Can you draft the poll? Yeah. Sorry. So as Delali discussed, so I'm the DR coordinator, and I'm going to just do a quick introduction of what the working group is and what we are planning on the toolkit. So our working group is basically coordinating the DR-related activities across the GeoWork program, and we are the primary liaison to UNDR. We have 100 members, and we have 3 sub-working groups, each led by the 3 co-chairs who are going to speak after me. So subgroup 1 is doing the coordination with the GeoWork program, and this is the group led by David that coordinates the EORISK toolkit, overall coordination the toolkit development. And the subgroup 2 and 3, led by Kine and Nathaniel, are basically working on the contents. Oops. So our toolkit is which we are developing with the UNDR and Esri. Is designed to provide UNDR users that with access to open source EO tools and services to fill knowledge gap on hazards, vulnerabilities, and exposure at the country level. And then we are planning on the contents such as policy briefs to provide government decision makers with the the concise short summary of the what the tools and services are about, and address natural hazards and that could cause disasters and the options to deal with. What we mean by the users are those who can use the products for their work. So we're looking into people in the national and local disaster management authorities, development and humanitarian actors, and the Sentai focal points. And the working with the UNDR, especially with the team called the UNDR's flagship initiative, the graph, and their team is quite essential in our partners in this toolkit development. The graph is which Andrew is going to talk more in depth, but it pays close attention to interconnected and systemic risk. And they work not only with the country governments, but also UN partners like UNDP, the OCHA, and all these, the country team, UN country team. So we hope to be helpful for them with the tools and services. So that's pretty much it from me. And I'm just going to show you if you have any questions to me, Andrew or Dave, please feel free to ask questions on the chat so that we can address either by the text or verbally after the presentations. So I'm just going to publish the poll result. I'm not going to. Can you hold on? Show on the stage. So let's see. So I'm not going to close it, but can everyone see the result on the screen? Like this is, for example, number 3. Can you?
Yeah, I can see the
Yeah.
number 3, but no one has
No one
voted
has
yet.
voted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so please, people, start voting. The question, I mean, your answers, like tell us who you are, because we're asking like what like whether you guys are, any of you are working in the graph pilot country, which is like Sudan, Somalia, Eswatini, Costa Rica, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Fiji, or like any of the candidate countries or any other small island developing countries, because these are the countries that we want to be useful for. And if you are like, if you have any relationship with these countries, we want to talk to you about the possibility of working together. Let's see, what are the other, so where you're from, and the other question I want to ask you, so whether you're a data provider, analyst, humanitarian agencies, and are you working in the your work program activities? And this is also a very important one. Yes, so so whoever like said yes to this question, please do identify yourself in the chat or raise hand so we know who you are, and we would love to talk to you and like possibly get your feedback during the discussion session. Please let us know who you are in the chat, and what which is your work program and what tools and services you're developing. Similarly, for those who said yes to this question about being from the graph pilot countries or small island developing countries, please do identify yourself if you said yes to the first 3. So thank you. And I'll give Delali just take over and introduce Andrew, please.
Sure. Thank you, Ree, for giving us that overview. And I'll encourage participants to answer the polls if they haven't already done so, because we'll be sharing the answers at the end of the session. So our next speaker is Andrew Spisoka, who is the program manager, program management officer working with UNDR, and he's going to talk to us about the GRAPH initiative. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues, and thank you so much for this opportunity for UNDRR to join the GEO week. we're quite happy to present to you an overview of the graph so you can situate this conversation in the context of the EO risk toolkit that's being developed. If I can get to the next slide, please, or the first slide of my presentation. What I want to present is the graph as a new program or a flagship program of UNDRR. For colleagues who are aware of the Global Assessment Report of 2019, particularly Chapter 2, that Global Assessment Report looked at the increasingly systemic impacts of cascading hazards and compounding risks that the world is seeing, no more underscored by the global pandemic and the climate crisis, where we are seeing the cascading effects of hazards and risk accelerators such as climate change really engendering systemic impacts across multiple UN member states. Certainly the global pandemic has showed some of the weaknesses of not only health systems, but social protection systems. Our ability to safeguard jobs, incomes, and livelihoods has been underscored by the pandemic. But at the same time, what we're also seeing is the acceleration of the hazard environment because of the impacts of climate change. So the graph was designed by UNDRR in consultation with UN member states to help plant that seed of support on what it means to address interconnected and systemic risk at country level, but also recognizing that some of the impacts are transboundary that we're seeing, and increasingly national systems need to be shored up to address interconnected and systemic risk. The graph is designed under 4 pillars. The first pillar really speaks to the EO community. What we see in a lot of UN member states is either a siloed access to risk information that sits in different sector ministries, is not shared, it sits as gray literature, and in consequence, it's not informing planning, it's not informing budgeting, and it's not informing either development or humanitarian action. And so the first pillar of graph is really to facilitate at national level access to the best available risk science. And this is where UNDR is playing an aggregator role. And what I'll speak to this morning is the presentation on Pillar 1 specifically. Pillar 2 is really around supporting those countries that have particular risk assessment questions, a particular risk analysis challenge. Could be, for example, issues around climate-induced internal displacement, or climate migration, as some commentators refer to it. It could be around information gaps, particular vulnerabilities and exposure to multiple hazards in a specific geographic area of a country. So pillar 2 of graph is very much around providing technical and financial support to country efforts to improve the risk knowledge environment at country level. Pillar 3 is focused on building the capacity of not only national disaster management agencies, but more importantly, intra-ministerial work around joint and integrated risk assessments. Again, looking beyond direct loss and damage, which tends to have been the practice, where risk assessments at country level have tended to focus on hazard by hazard analytics. What the graph is designed to do is to support those countries to look at more of these second order, third order impacts as a shock or disaster reverberates through a country or a socioeconomic system, what the impact is on jobs, what the impact is on energy systems, on food systems, and what some of the methodological tools that countries may want to use as we look to the next generation analytics to tackle the more systemic nature of risk at country level and indeed globally. And the last pillar of graph, pillar 4, is very much around strengthening collaborations for risk-informed decision making. And this is where the collaboration between the EO community and UNDR's work under the graph really comes together, where our role is very much to broker access between global generators of risk information with national users to ensure that those investments in both by the EO community and other risk community is actually making a difference, a measurable change at country level. Next slide, please. And one of the first efforts to do that is to really broaden the risk knowledge landscape, that colleagues at national level understand what's actually available to them. And so the graph, in partnership with the GEO Secretariat and the EO community, has developed the National Risk Information Portal or platform. We're still working on the name. This is a new global product that's in development now. We will have a functional portal by next month. But I wanted to use this occasion to just walk you through exactly what the portal or the platform is. Next slide, please. What we recognize is that they're just given the multitude of risk information that's out there. And it underscores the need to have a common language, look at issues around standardization, harmonization of what we mean and by certain terms. Colleagues will be aware that the International Science Council last year with UNDR endorsed the hazard taxonomy, which is around 302 or 304 hazards. And what we're trying to do is to use the risk information platform to engender a discussion around how we organize risk information at country level, how we leverage the wealth of information that's out there and the tools that are out there to improve the risk data ecosystem at country level. So the risk information portal is UNDR's offer to UN member states and to the UN system to bring all this information together in one platform, to aggregate the information. And we're doing that in accordance with the hazard taxonomy, with a view not only to look at interoperability issues around risk data sets, but also to start organizing the information, open access information around different data sets on, say, social vulnerability, economic vulnerability. We're not proposing that UNDOR will become the arbiter of what vulnerability means at country level. What we're trying to do is bring together in one platform all the risk assessment work on multidimensional vulnerabilities in one place, so that national users understand what the information is currently available. At the same time, what we need to see, and certainly underscored by COP26, is the need to integrate climate change into national planning processes, whether it's national adaptation plans, sector plans, and transport, energy, etc. We really see the portal as an opportunity to bring a lot of climate information and climate projections into the DRR space, and to not only engender a conversation about what climate futures mean in terms of disaster risk reduction and climate adaptation, but how do you actually measure investments over time that are making a difference at country level. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of what the portal will look like. Again, it's designed as a multi-purpose one-stop national clearinghouse of information. We are not duplicating or taking anyone's risk information and putting our stamp on it. What we're doing is aggregating, providing a pass-through function, so to speak, where we are assisting national partners to better access the information that the EO community is generating, and actually monitoring how it's being used by national partners. We're doing this to kind of as a silo buster, because what we recognize is, again, there's a lot of risk information that sits as gray literature in different ministries, and it's not used to inform, it's not kept alive, this information, and it's not improved upon. So the portal really over time will become more useful as it's enriched by increasing density of risk data sets that are uploaded into the system. We're drawing, as I said, on multiple sources of risk information. At the bottom, you can see some of the logos of the organizers or the progenitors of the risk data that we are collecting and putting together under this one-stop clearinghouse. We're designing this again with a view that many UN member states don't necessarily have the capacity or resources to maintain such a system. So we're designing it as a very low maintenance, low cost. UNDR is obviously covering the front end development of the system, but it's really quite once it's the architecture is set, maintaining the system is really a low cost proposition for most countries, both in terms of cost and transactions. We're also looking at it in terms of multiple use cases. Again, DRR strategy development, resilience strategies, sector plans, adaptation plans, common country assessments, which, sorry for the vernacular there, that's a UN risk assessment that informs the UN's 5-year plan in any country. Every country where UN has presence, there is a common country analysis, which is the collective risk assessment of all UN partners. What we're finding is that the variety of risk information that's actually informing those common country assessments is not as diverse as it could be. So even the UN system needs to make better use of the risk information that's being made available by different global institutions. The end users, as I mentioned, are really envisaged as national planning officers, infrastructure officers in the various ministries, ministries of finance. Very much the graph is positioned and premised on the need to move beyond national disaster agencies and really bring into the conversation a multi-sectoral approach. The portal itself will be accompanied by a training package, not only to help end users navigate the site, but also understand how to use risk information in the way for which it was intended. What we recognize too is that a lot of data sets are out there, but national partners don't always know how best to use them to inform national planning processes. So this is where we also see the EO community as a tremendous opportunity for us to work together to collectively approach some of the graph countries to ensure that we're not only sunlighting the information that's being made available by the EO community, but actually training people in a collective way, that they're not getting training on a particular hazard one day and another hazard the next, and that we collectively work together to improve risk assessment methods, and that we bring this information to bear at national level. Let me just finish by saying we're focusing on 7 countries this year. This is just an outline of the platform and gives you an indication of its components. We're working on 7 countries this year: Fiji, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Eswatini, Sudan, South Sudan, and Costa Rica, and now the Maldives. But then we're branching out to 25 additional countries next year, with an ambition of targeting 100 countries by the end of 2030. So each country would have its own national information platform. So start aggregating all this risk information together and working collectively across the risk community, so we can support UN member states to better make use of all the investments that are being made by the organizations in this call. Thank you so much. I'll stop there and turn it over back to the chair. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Andrew, for that great presentation. It's great to see the work UNDR is doing using systemic risk information to strengthen countries' resilience to disasters. To build on that presentation is Dave Borges. Dave is the co-chair of the GeoDR working group. He's the lead for subgroup 1, and he's also a physical scientist with NASA. Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Delali. Hi all, thank you so much for being with us today. We have some great attendees in the audience, so I'm going to be relatively brief so that we can get to our discussion. So, and thanks to Andrew for the latest updates and perspective directly from UNDRR. We'll shift a little bit and look at GEO directly right now. So our GeoDRR working group conducted a survey in partnership with the Climate and Capacity Development working groups towards the end of this past summer. These are some of the results that we received that are guiding some of the efforts that we're doing right now. From left to right, top to bottom, I realize these are a bit hard to read, but greater than 50% of the current GEO work program activities right now, of which there are roughly about 65 to 70 on a global scale, self-identified that they do align with or support the UNDRR Sendai framework. Greater than 50% also said that they were unaware if countries at national levels leverage their currently available GEO activities right now. Greater than 50% of all GEO activities also said that they were unaware if their activities were represented or mentioned in any national disaster risk reduction strategies, which of course is tied to Sendai framework target E, which is trying to increase the number of nations with disaster risk reduction strategies. And then as a subset of that, our GeoDRR working group is very curious in understanding where Earth observations might be mentioned in national disaster risk reduction strategies and how we could increase that number over time. On the bottom there, working with Sendai Framework National Focal Points. Again, greater than half of geo activities answered no, they do not work directly with Sendai National Focal Points. Working directly with disaster risk reduction practitioners, institutions, or agencies was a better answer, with a kind of a third of yes, no, and unanswered there. And then finally, quite an encouraging result for us was willingness to participate in the development of this new Earth observations EO risk toolkit, which we had a great almost 60% of geo activities are willing to support the development of the toolkit. We were very excited to see that. Next slide, please. If somebody that was not very familiar with Group on Earth Observations Geo were to go to Geo's website right now and be asking themselves, what does Geo do? What does Geo do particularly for disasters? I want to learn more about what they do and see if any of the efforts can add value to my own work stream. You would end up at this page on the website of the almost 70 implementation plans, and each one of these tiny boxes that you can't read here would lead you to a quite lengthy implementation plan. So I think there's a more effective way to do it, and that's one of the primary purposes of the toolkit itself, is to aggregate a subset of the entire work program and highlight useful content from all because there's such an amazing array of efforts going on across the Geo community, but there's not a great way currently to understand what that disaster subset is. Next slide, please. So that's a bit of background on why we are developing the EO Risk Toolkit. We can see here, users are those who can use and benefit from Geo products that might be suitable for their work, to include, but not limited to, national and local civil protection agencies, humanitarian actors. I know that we have representation from that sector with WFP in the audience right now. Sendai National Focal Points, of which we have several as members of our DRR working group, which have provided invaluable guidance thus far. Next slide, please. So this is just a conceptual rendering. We are actively developing the toolkit right now, but this is more or less what it will look like. We will be leveraging a Esri Hub. So we thank Esri as in the context of their Geo Associate membership for supporting this effort directly, and also to UN. So this will be a Esri Hub built on UNDRR's Esri account rather than on. So this will live within the UNDRR environment, and we're very excited to be able to co-design this with Andrew and his team, as they are, as you heard before, rolling out the NRIP. We'll be designing and launching the EO Risk Toolkit in close partnership with them. Next slide, please. So expected contents, three primary buckets here: use cases, policy briefs, and technical guidance, essentially. And I believe the next slide is simply an example here of yeah, you can go to the next slide. That's fine. So and standardizing content formats. So in addition to policy briefs, where you can see that we're actually working on a geo-wide policy brief outline, will be the working group will be sharing thematically oriented Earth observations policy briefs on topics such as wildfire as well as floods, and then use cases with standardized formats as listed here: summary, impact, methodology, results, challenges, etc., to try and make the workflow as easy as possible in reaching out to existing geo activities and helping them develop these impact-based use cases, like in the next slide. So this is just one particular example. In November 2020, 2 significant tropical cyclones landfalled in Central America and over Honduras in particular. The first one, Hurricane Ida, a Category 4, essentially pushed to the breaking point a hydroelectric dam managed by the Honduran National Electric Energy Company, INE. And roughly about a week later, another significant hurricane landfall. And in between those two times, INE ended up working directly with the GeoGlows initiative, which uses which shares streamflow forecasting based on ECMWF data, and they were able to regulate their the water discharge volumes directly informed by GeoGlow streamflow forecasting information. So it really is I think a wonderful use case example in here to just serve as an example, and as we reach out to the Geo and CEOS community to try and ask if there are similar examples that our working group can work with you to develop and highlight on the risk toolkit. Next slide, please. These are just some relevant work program activities. It's not a comprehensive list, but these are just some that we are already actively in email dialogues with, and establishing contacts with others. I didn't include in here the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites, or CEOS, Working Group Disasters, of which I think we have representation. So we'd welcome comments in the chat from that community. But yeah, just to serve it as an example, and to use the Geo Week platform this week to update everyone here on what we're aiming to do. And I think my last and final slide next provides a bit of a look forward on the timeline. So essentially, we are targeting public launch of the EORIS toolkit at UNDRR's 7th session of the global platform for DRR. So it will be towards the end of May, possibly in Bali, possibly virtually, depending on how things turn out over the next couple of months. But you can see that initial toolkit hub development is occurring now. Will continue through the December-January timeframe, and then the most important row in here is user co-design group creation. I think because as early on in the process as possible, I really want to identify and develop a group of users that are interested and willing to provide their feedback, so that we can. I think that's the most bulletproof way to ensure that something is useful is to have user feedback early in the iteration process. So that's the timeline that we're looking at, and I think I'll hand it off back to Rui and Delali for next slides. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dave, for building on Andrew's presentation. It's great to see how the Geo Working Program has EO tools and services that are either being developed or have already been developed to build into the graph work and DRR in general. After those two very insightful presentations, we'll now begin the Q&A discussion. This will be initially we had Kene Owunbe, who is the co-chair of the subgroup 3 of the GeoDR working group, but he seems not to be available online right now. So we will have Nathaniel, who is the subgroup 2 lead for the GeoDR working group. Nathaniel is a research scientist with the government of Canada, and he will be supported by Rian Langklos. Rian is the Director of Public Safety Solutions with Esri, and Esri is actually a key partner of the EORIS toolkit that is being developed. So he'll be standing by to respond to any technical questions you may have. Nathaniel and Rian, the floor is yours.
Sure. David, did you want to maybe ask the first question for the Q&A, just because it's related to the EO toolkit, and then I'll take the other question.
Oh, and also, please, those who have said yes to these two questions on the poll, please, raise your hand. At least 3 people said yes to this poll question 5, like whether you have the mature tools coming out of GeoWork program, as well as some people who are working or live in the Graph Pilot countries or any other small island countries. or maybe there are, I mean, at least 2 people that we want, I mean, are said yes to this question. There could be more. And these people have are very much, we want to hear their opinion because they're related to our discussion questions here.
Yes, wonderful. So here we are. So what do you think of the plan of the EO Risk Toolkit, just based on the high level overview provided here, and as well, what the tool services developed by the GEO work program activities are available or have been used. Laura, I see your comment in the chat. I'd be really interested I think I'm sorry, I apologize, but I know that you lead WFP's geospatial office in the OPSEN in Rome, and that you yourself aggregate a very wide variety of disaster response related data. But I'd be very curious in any comments or feedback you might have. Can we see if she is attempting to talk, or if do we have to make people speakers, Rui?
If she can raise hand, I can bring her to the, I can invite her to stage. Or at least 2 other people who said yes to the question.
Yes, yeah, of course.
5, yeah.
Or anybody else that has thoughts.
Please raise hand. Those who said yes to the poll question 5 with the mature tools and services coming out of your work program.
Lara is on stage now.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hi, everyone, good morning. So thanks for this presentation. It's extremely interesting. It's one of the best side events so far. Perhaps it's extremely relevant for us in WFP. And we also work with Esri a lot. And so, I mean, it really brings together a lot of relevant things for us. And it seems amazing, the toolkit so far. I mean, we are doing similar things. We struggle. Laura. Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, I think we lost you for a moment. So can you, whatever you said in
yes.
5 seconds ago, please repeat.
Because my internet isn't great. No, just to say that at first glance, it seems amazing, the work done so far and the plans ahead. And we would really love to be involved because we are developing something similar. It doesn't have like a global perspective. It's very much country by country on bringing together hazards, vulnerabilities, and exposures. Normally, the platform sits in the Met offices, depending on the country, and it visualizes data from the government, climate data on temperature, precipitation, and also hazards, vulnerability, and risk. And we face some challenges because often we also use global data from the global assessment of risks or other in-house systems that we have developed for floods, especially, and it's always how to come to build that gap that it was mentioned at the beginning from global data to subnational. So I mean, it would be great to work together on this one, and we would love to be more involved. We also do a lot of aggregations. I'm sure we are facing the same challenges when building these systems. And I would love to touch base, David, and show you and the team what we're doing and how can we really join forces.
Hi, Laura. Nathaniel here. Just a quick question for you. What countries are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the graph countries, or is there some prioritization of countries?
No, it's really random. It's whoever reaches to us through the WFP office in the country. So we have from everywhere. The project started in Asia, that is very natural hazard prone. It's easier in terms of rapid onset disasters that sometimes are easier to bring in a platform, depending. But it's starting in Asia. There are a couple of countries in Asia. Now we're doing on the Dakar, West Africa region. It's a bit random. It's a bit everywhere, but it's not that global approach. It's very country specific. It has global data from Earth observation, but then on the hazards, normally it's country specific.
Okay, thank you.
One in particular, I think, Laura, would be Bangladesh. yeah, I'm pretty certain you would have a focus area on that on flood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Laura, I was actually in touch with Peter Moore from FAO earlier, and he was talking about, he was already working with the GWIS, which is a wildfire geowork program. And he's working with Myanmar, Cambodia, Sudan. So maybe we can all bring forces together and work together.
That's true. I saw his presentation yesterday, by the way. It was very good, and it's all very geospatial and really nicely packaged. So it would be a good foundation, absolutely.
Well, we really appreciate your comments, Laura, and I think that your participation as an expert and receiving your feedback as an expert user and provider of data to countries would be really invaluable. So I've made a note, and we'll certainly follow up, reach out to you, and make sure that you're included during the next steps as the EO-Risk toolkit is built out and we move through that chart that I showed previously. Thank you so much.
And then David, Marie has another question too, just on the chat. Marie, do you want to speak? You raise your hand, maybe.
Okay, Marie, please go ahead. Can you talk? Are you unmuted?
If
she's unmuted, but I think maybe her microphone is not working.
So she says, I said yes to the questions we had and are working closely with Paige to discuss the EO-Risk toolkit, but it's not particularly a mature discussion yet. From my personal perspective, Pacific is still growing in this space, and with some other maturities such as Digital Earth Pacific, these tools will grow in their utility and uptake.
Hi,
yes,
David, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Hello.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting to talk, so I didn't have my microphone set up. Apologies. Yeah, I guess from the Pacific perspective, it's still quite, still we're developing, I guess, the relationship with Earth observation data. So I'm really keen to see how this toolkit is developing, because I think it will definitely be useful across the Pacific, because a lot of the kind of case studies that you've shown are very relevant for them, but potentially they're not quite at the point to have the conversation. So it'd be good to make sure that we keep that engagement with PAG so that we can continue to have those discussions in the Pacific with those countries, so that they're aware of these things, and then maybe we can help if they're interested to bring them into their own workflows.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that comment. I certainly agree. I'm relatively familiar with Digital Earth Pacific. I'm more familiar with, I think, slightly older and more mature Digital Earth Africa, and I'm also aware that there's Digital Earth America conversations ongoing currently right now. So yes, we're trying to understand the greater network or network of networks, as it were, and try and add value by serving as a place where all of the different disaster related efforts across GEO can be highlighted, and their value can be shared with a greater audience. I see Danielle in the chat. Could you share in the chat the priority countries for the DRR toolkit? Yeah,
yeah, I'm working on it.
You want me
it's basically the same as the poll question too, the graph pilot countries and the candidates and other small island countries such as Jamaica. So I'm just gonna copy and paste now.
Okay.
Working on it.
And then do we want to shift? I think we have a couple more questions on a final slide. Nathaniel, if you want to.
Yeah, just before we move on, I thought maybe just we could focus on one aspect. So David, you had presented sort of the use cases and the policy briefs and this kind of thing as content. Is that something that you're interested also at maybe adding content that's not listed under those particular kind of templates down the road? I mean, just to give an idea of where you see this growing or scaling up. And
yes, we're trying in the early phases of development. We're trying to keep some guide rails on and the best way to ensure forward progress is have a aim small, miss small. But yes, as we get a mature toolkit, hub site stood up and we started getting content on it, I think we will have an agile. We'll do our best to be agile and adapting honestly to and to be. I think the most important thing is to be agile and be adaptive to the feedback that we receive from those that were the communities that we're trying to support. Right.
Coming back to the integrated or systemic risk idea that Andrew was highlighting, and I think he was mentioning as well just the interest in sort of modern technologies like artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence, those kind of things. I think that's an exciting future as well to see as ways we can combine that, excuse me, with the Earth observational data, big data, down the road, I guess. But I see the countries are listed there for folks. And yeah, let's move on then to the, by all means, if you have further thoughts on questions 1 and 2, please, contact us afterwards, any one of us, and relay your thoughts, and we'll pass them on and consider them, of course. So moving on to question 3. Yeah, go ahead.
Nathaniel, Francois, OGC Francois had her hand up and she wanted to be handed the mic.
Sure.
Yeah. Hello, Marie Francois.
Is she on the stage?
Okay. Yeah, she came on and okay, I've invited her to stage, but she's not. Yes, she's joined stage now. So
okay, yeah, Francois.
Received the invite. Thank you. Well, it was a little bit tricky for me to answer the questions because we are not providing, OGC is not providing data, or we are providing technologies. And so when to the question, do you have mature tools? I answered yes. And so you were asking to the people who have answered yes to explain why. Because we have some standards such as a GeoPackage that allows to get the data when the network is accessible, because in crisis situation or in disasters, very often the stability of a network is one of the challenges. But then it's difficult. And then we also have, for instance, the environment data retrieval API. So we try to define standards to access the data, to encode the data, and so on. And it's difficult to say if they're mature because I work with the innovation program. And what we do is that we look for the challenges, remaining challenges, to address them. And in fact, the tools or the resources you have are never enough, because you always have new challenges and new disasters and new vulnerabilities and new risks. So this is why it's difficult to say if we are mature. Something we try to address too is the reusability that appeared in your discussion when you talk on which region are you working and how far it can be reusable to another area where you don't have exactly the same data, but maybe you can have the same type of analysis ready data if it has been pre-processed. So this is the type of things we work on. I apologize because I have been willing to participate to the DRR working group since a long time, but I always have conflicts in my agenda. But after this session, I definitely will try. I think we can try to contribute there.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much. And I think you're absolutely right that there is that essential aspect of the methodology whether it's augmented or AI down the road, but also existing ones that are being applied and used and developed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so our third question is, do you work with or are you from a graph pilot country? And we have the list up there on the chat, or small island development state. If so, how can we work together? So we're particularly interested in, as many of us, David and others have mentioned, of the pilot countries that are being rolled out. And obviously that's going to expand to many, many countries down the road. And I think also just remind you, if you have any questions on the design of the EO Risk Toolkit, we have Ryan here, so definitely want to give him a question or two as well with Esri. So please,
on
yeah,
the
keep your questions coming in.
Yeah, on the question 3, there should be at least 2 people who said yes to, so please come forward or raise hand.
We know you're there. Don't be shy. Come on. Any thoughts or ideas and suggestions?
There's a question from Lara, so in the chat.
Yeah, so would it be very helpful to know if the toolbox is leveraging any existing initiatives, Inform, Risk Warning, GARS, or grids, etc. So global assessment reports, grids, the acronym is, Laura, can you just give the acronym?
I'm sorry for the multiple question, Lisa. So, no, because we are also part of the Inform group from the European Commission, and there has been also a lot immense work in compiling data of risk and socioeconomic vulnerability at subnational level. It was at national level years back, but now it's going quite subnational.
Okay.
And there is a lot out there that it's always even hard to keep up. So it's whether there were any plans to already build on existing initiatives. The grids basically are just mostly sound like a sort of one-stop shop for visualizing the risk data from the GARS, from the different GARS that is provided.
So maybe I'll pass that on to David. You're probably best positioned to answer that one, if you can.
I don't have a specific answer right now, Laura, other than I would like to follow up. I'm aware of, but not not very aware of, and we can all learn more. As you say, it's a constantly evolving landscape, and which is you're already demonstrating why we want you as as a feedback source as we move forward. So thank you for that, and I'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
Maybe just to come in quickly, Lara, from UNDRR. So the GRAPH, the Global Risk Assessment Framework initiative, it does build on existing UN initiatives. So through GRAPH, we're actually financing the subnational coverage of Inform in Bangladesh, enabling for the first time to have full subnational coverage for the country. So again, we're looking to supplement where existing UN programming is already in place. At the same time, if in that case there was specific risk information gaps around exposure and vulnerability to various hazards, so we're financing the plugging of that gap. But more importantly, it's around how users at the end are applying this information for national development and humanitarian purposes. And that's where we see the risk information platform as engendering just more collective action around how risk information is being used by various partners and end users at country level. So again, happy to have a conversation on that. And also to say that we've reached out to WFP and other UN partners to ensure that we're standing on the shoulders of other organizations who have collected a lot of risk information. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Andrew, for that added context there. And now the fourth question, I'll just remind everyone what it was. It was does anyone have any suggestions for collaborations? In other words, integrating different data from multiple activities to help countries address systemic risks. I think we're already highlighting or including that in what we're discussing here. So any other thoughts or ideas or suggestions would be really valued. So come forward, please.
Actually, Nathaniel, I think Daniel had his hand raised up, so perhaps he wanted to.
Yeah, for some reason I'm not seeing hands raised. So, but yeah, so just definitely bring them to the floor. Yeah.
Okay, he's on stage now. Hello, Daniel.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. So thank you, first of all, for the nice exhibit or the explanation of what the toolkit should be. That's very clear. So just wanted to reiterate that from the Human and Planet Initiative, we are able to provide exposure data over time for built-up population and densities. And now that we have the list, the final list of the priority countries, we definitely can provide you that. So we will be in touch with you. And I wanted also to comment that for the Earth Observation Toolkit, of course, we hear that the Inform, I'm part of the commission. So the Inform could be listed also in the toolkit as one of the ready available system for countries to use. Finally, just wanted to say that Costa Rica could be one case studies for us to work on, also because we have been working to provide information also for the toolkit for sustainable development. This is the parallel toolkit. So yeah, we are. You can count on us. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nathaniel, Marie-Francois also wants to talk, so I'm handing her the mic.
Sure, go ahead. Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Go ahead, Francois.
Yes, I don't have the mic. Okay. Yes, sorry, my network is a bit slow. So CTC has organized a side event from local ground cooperation, a nation initiatives for faster global innovation for disaster loss reduction. This was on a Wednesday and Thursday morning. I think that the initiatives we are setting are here to facilitate and enable this global cooperation. And you can contribute as a sponsor, but also as a participant or as an observer. And this is what we wanted to present into this side event, how we can enable this cooperation. So please look at the side event recording and contact me if you have any interest.
Thank you so much. And I guess we are have three more minutes left. Definitely, as I said, if you have further thoughts and suggestions, please send them through email. Otherwise, I'll hand it maybe over to Rui for some closing remarks. Or
no, give it to Dilali to close.
Dilali.
Thank you, Rui. I would also like to, I think on the screen, there's only Rui's email. So I'd kindly ask Dave and the rest of the speakers, Nathaniel, Ryan, to put your email addresses in the chat. However, I would like to say, I think this has been quite an interesting discussion. I mean, yesterday we had a limited time for discussions, but it looks like today we really had some good discussions. So I'd really encourage you to follow up with emails on the emails that are being provided in the chat. After an interesting one-hour session, we hope you now have some deep insight into the EO risk kit being developed. We'll be looking forward to your feedback and especially your ideas for potential content from the Geo Working Program activities. There will be recordings of this session later on in the platform. Once we end it, the recording will be there. So you could go over and then perhaps now get some great ideas that you'd like to share with us. So on that note, thank you very much for making time. Your 1 hour has been very valuable to us. I don't know if anyone else would like to say anything before I close the session? Anyone from the speakers?
Thank you so much for moderating and leading this session, Delali. We really appreciate it. And thanks all for attending.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Great. Have a wonderful day, and we'll continue the conversation via email. Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.